Hello everyone. Welcome to the new session of Principle of Cattle Housing Part 1. So in this session we are going to study about cattle housing. So why there is a requirement of cattle housing. Okay, so the protection from adverse weather condition. So housing is very important for human as well as the animals also, especially our cattle, right? So the protection from adverse weather condition, it provide protection from the adverse weather condition to the cattle. Minimize the energy loss. So when there is a proper housing facility, then there will be less loss of energy. Protection against loss of appetite and the body weight. Even there is a loss of body weight and the loss of appetite as well. Protection against theft and predator, etc. So when there is a proper housing facility, then there will be less chances of theft of our cattle and also the predators, right? Because some of the animals are eaten by the carnivorous animals. So when they are having a proper housing facility, then we are providing actually the protection against the theft and predators, right? So opportunity to express species natural behavior patterns, and we are also able to know what are the opportunity, right? And we can know the express of the species, okay, the expression of the species or the natural behavior pattern of the species which we are keeping them as our cattle, right? So we can have a keen eye over the behavior of the animals as well, right? Grouping. We can group the animals according to their food, according to their habit, right? So this is a very important importance of housing to the cattle. In addition, for proper feeding, milking and other function, the housing is needed, right? So we can provide proper feeding to the animals, to our cattle, right? If we are having a proper housing facility, then we can provide proper food to them. No wastage of food will be there, right? Milking means taking out milk from the cattle. That will be quite easier, feasible, and there is no wastage of the milk even. The house is needed for these two purposes, right? Proper housing is also needed for the insemination, treatment, segregation and the parturition. So for this particular insemination, artificial insemination or the natural insemination, we require a proper housing facility to the cattle, right? Segregation of the animals is also easy when we are having the proper house, and even the parturition of the animals, right? If we are having the proper housing facility, then we can keep our cattle away from several diseases, right? Selection of site for farm building. So we require some place for building our cattle housing, right? So selection of site for farm building, we require a proper farmhouse. For construction of farm building, selection of site is most important. So we require a proper place for farm building, right? Farm building. Before selecting a site, the following points are to be considered. So we should keep in our mind that what are the requirement before we are going to select any farm land for building farm buildings, right? Okay, for selection of the site for farm building, the first thing we keep in mind, that is the soil, the type of soil. The soil must be suitable for the strong foundation of the building. Okay, so marshy, clay, sandy or rock soils are not suitable. So we require a proper land with a suitable soil in it, so that we can bring a strong foundation for the farm building, right? Loamy and gravelly soils are best suited for the building construction. So what type of soil must be there? The soil must be either loamy or the gravelly soil, so that we can have a proper foundation of farm building at that land, right? Or at that soil. Availability of land. There should be the vast area to construct all building and should give way to the future expansion of farm. So our farm land must not be a small, it must be a larger area, and it must have some land. Suppose we are building our farm building in this particular area, then there must be some vacant area, so that in future we can expand our farmland, we can expand our farm building even, right? So at least 2-3 acre land is required for 200 cows accommodation. So when we are considering for the farm building, then we must keep in mind, so if we require a 200 cows, want to keep 200 cows in our farm building, then we must require 2-3 acres of the land. And if we require more than that, then in that ratio only our land area must increase, right? So for 10 cows, 4-acre land is essential for the fodder production. So we require fodder production also, right? So for 10 cows only, we require 4 acre of land, so that we can produce fodder for them, right? Drainage system. Proper drainage of rain and subsoil water should be provided to keep healthy environment and to protect the building from the dampness. So this is very, very important. There should be a proper drainage system. So whatever the rainwater is there, or whenever there is a water after washing our cattle, right? Then what will happen to that water? That water should be proper drained off, and subsoil water should be provided to keep healthy environment, right? So to protect the building from the dampness, there is a proper drainage system in our farm building. So this is one of the very important aspects. Availability of water. We require lots of water for our cattle, right? So the plenty of water is needed for the farm operations like washing, fodder cultivation, processing of milk and by-products, and for even drinking of cattle. So for these we require lots of water. Plenty of water is our requirement. So water source which provide water constantly is essential. So we require a good quality and a constant water supply, right? So this is a very, very important aspects. Electricity. It should be available at the site, right? So it is needed for the operating various machines used in the farm and is the light source of the animals. So animals also require light, and we are having so many machines, right? So for that working, we require a proper availability of the electricity. So the electricity supply should be in a proper way, right? So nowadays we can have a solar panels over our farm building, right? So this we can also opt for our proper electricity supply. Protection from wind and solar radiation. So if the farm building is open or exposed area, the wind breaks in the form of tall quick growing trees and should be grown near the building, right? So this will reduce the wind velocity and solar radiation, so we can have a proper tree, surrounding our building, so that it can reduce the wind velocity and also provide shade to the animals. So this is very, very important. Protection from noise and other disturbance. The farm site should be away from the noise producing factory, chemical industry, sewage disposing area. Very important. The industrial effluents in the farm of the gaseous or the liquid may pollute the surrounding resources. So as there are so many types of gases and liquid pollution that are harming to the human, right? In the same way, they can harm to our cattle even. So if there is a seepage of such a poisonous liquid to our farm building or the farm area and can pollute the stored water, then what will happen? That can harm to our cattle. In the same way, the gaseous, if there is any chemical industry or factory nearby, so that can produce noise pollution as well as the air pollution. So that can also harm to our farm building. So we must keep these things in mind before planning a farmhouse for our cattle. Noise is also found to affect the animal production. Hence, the farm should be away from the city. So always we must plan our farm building or the farm for the cattle away from the city so that we can keep them away from the noise. We can keep them away from the factories that produce so many types of chemicals as well as the air pollution, right? And also the sewage disposal. Miscellaneous things. Other facilities like availability of the telephone, nearby school for children or farm workers, post office, shopping center, and the entertainment facilities should be provided. So why we require these things? These are nothing to do with the farm building, but it has to do with the people who are working in the farm building. Right? So if the people are working in the farm building, so there must be a small school nearby, right? So that they can take their children to the school. They can live there and they can take their children to that school, right? There must be post office because post office is very, very important for the farm workers. Okay, so banking facilities or any postal facilities they require. So there must be a post office near the farm building. Shopping center. Shopping center should be there because they can go for their shopping or whatever the things they require of the daily use, they can buy from there, right? So these are some basic necessities of people. People means the people who are working in the farm, that is farm workers. So these facilities must be there nearby our farm building so that they can live and they can provide the protection and they can work in the farm building. So this is very important. Housing system. There are different housing system. In India, the great diversity exists in the design of the dairy animal shelter. So we are having different types of dairy animal shelters. So let us see what are those. Building design and the construction material largely affect the thermal comfort inside the dairy shelters, right? So whatever the construction material we are using, construction material we are using for making the house for the cattle, that affect the thermal comfort inside the dairy shelters, right? So the efficiently designed sheds can help lesser the thermal stress, thereby increasing feed intake, milk production and reproductive efficiency. So the thermal stress is very, very important. They are giving more emphasis on the thermal stress. So if our housing system is designed in such a way that the lots of heat and lots of sunshine is coming, right, to the cattle, then it will have effect on the feed intake, milk production, right, and even the reproduction efficiency of the cattle. right? So this is one of the important aspects. Under varied climatic, geographical and economical conditions prevailing in India, designing an ideal set of building for the dairy animals throughout the country is impossible. So we are having different types of climatic condition. We are having different types of geographical and economical condition prevailing in India. Right, so we all know this, that our country is having so many variation in the geographical and the economical condition in the India, right? So designing a same type of building for the dairy animals, it not feasible and it is quite impossible even, right? So practically there are two systems of housing for the dairy animals, right? Two types of housing for the dairy animals. So what are those? Loose housing and conventional barns. Loose housing and conventional barns. So here we can see loose housing. Housing loose means animals are there free to move in place and there is a proper one side shed area there. When there is requirement of shed, they can go there. Otherwise, they can roam here and there in the farm, right? So that is called loose housing. Conventional barns, here you can see a proper housing facility is there and a proper place for each and every cattle is there. So that is a conventional barns. So we will see one by one. Loose housing. First of all, we are going to study about the loose housing. So it is a system of housing in which animals are kept loose in open paddock throughout the day and night except at the time of milking and treatment. So when there is a time of milking, we can tie our animal and we can take out the milk. Even at the time of insemination, we can tie them and or other treatment. Suppose there is some treatment to the animal, then also we can do that. Otherwise, they are free to roam here and there day and night in the farmland. In this system, shelter is provided along one side of the open paddock under which animals can retire when it is very hot or cold or during the rain. So when there is a rain time or when there is a very hot condition or a very cold condition, at that particular time animal can go in the shade area. Otherwise, they can roam here and there in the open paddock area, right? So this is the type of loose housing. Loose housing may be defined as a system where animals are kept loose except milking at the time of treatment, and this system is most economical. So we do not have require a lot of money because we are not constructing any proper way of building, right? So there is some shed type of area at one side and otherwise it is an open area. So we do not require a lot of capital to make it, right? So this is about the loose housing. Some features of the loose housing system are as follows. Cost of construction is significantly lower than the conventional type. Right? So it is possible to make further expansion without change. So we can expand even. And we do not require a lot of change in our housing system. Facilitate easy detection of animal in heat. So we can facilitate easy detection of animal in heat. Animals feel free and therefore proves more profitable with even minimizing grazing. So animals feel free and therefore proves more profitable. So animals are quite free to move here and there. Okay. Animals get optimum exercise, which is extremely important for the better health production. So comparatively, these animals are quite healthy because they are doing the physical activities when they are moving from one place to another. Overall, the better management can be rendered. So we do not require a lot of management system in this particular housing facility. Common feed, manger and the water tank is provided and concentrates are fed at the milking time, which is done in a separate milking barn or a parlor in which the cows are secured at milking time and are milked. So we will have a proper milking barn or a parlor. At the time of milking, we take our cattle to that particular area and we can have milk from them. Right? For proper feeding, there must be a proper area, and also for the drinking, there must be a water tank so that whenever they are thirsty, they can go to that place and they can have water. Right? So open paddock is enclosed by means of half walls or plain wire fence or the convenient height. So we can have a proper half walls and even sometime wire fences even. Okay? Cattle shed. The entire shed should be surrounded by the boundary wall of 5 inches height, and from their side a manger etc. on one side. So we can have a shed surrounded by a boundary wall, right, of 5 inches height, and they're three-sided from three-sided and manger on one side. The feeding area should be provided with 2 to 2.5 feet of manger space per cow. All along the manger, there should be 10 inches wide water trough to provide clean, even available drinking water. So this is the cattle shed area. This is the description of the cattle shed area. The water through thus constructed will also minimize the loss of fodder during the feeding. So when we are having a water trough, so there will be a loss of fodder during the feeding time, and near the manger under the roofed house, 5-inch wide floor should be paved with bricks having a little slope. Okay, so there must be a quiet slope so that when there is a urination, all the urine can pass to one side, right? So beyond that, there should be open unpaved area, that is 40 to 35, surrounded by 5 wall with 1 gate. Okay, it is preferable that animals face north when they are eating fodder under the shade. So while building this, we must keep this in mind that animal must face north when they are eating the fodder under the shade. During cold wind and winter, the animals will automatically lie down to have the protection from the walls. So at the time of prevailing cold winds and winter time, animal can sit side by the wall so that they can get protection, right? Shed for the calves. On one side of the main cattle shed, there be fully covered shed, that is in 10 to 15 inches to accommodate young calves. So we provide protection to the young calves, and on one side of the main cattle shed. So there must be a main cattle shed, okay, in which cows are there, and we must be our shed for the calves also. Shed for the calves, separate shed for young calves. Right? Such shed with suitable partitioning may also serve as calving pen under the adverse climatic condition. So when there is an adverse climatic condition, these shed provide suitable partitioning as well as protection to the young calves. Okay, so beyond this covered area, there should be 20 into 10 open area having boundary wall so that calves may move there freely. So there are some covered area, okay, in which these young calves can move freely and enjoy. So in this way, both calf and cattle shed will need in all 50 feet into 50 feet area for 20 adult cows and followers. So this much area is required for the 20 adult cows, right? So if one has a limited resource, he can build ordinary kacha or semi-kacha boundary walls, but feeding and water through should be cemented ones. So we can have kacha or semi-kacha boundary, right, for building the ordinary when we are having the limited resource, right? When their resource is limited, then we can have a kacha or semi-kacha boundary wall. But the place where the animals are get feeding, right, and the water availability, that must be cemented. So this is an important point. Advantage of loose housing. Cost of construction is cheaper, so we do not require a lot of capital to construct these loose housing. Suitable for the tropical region and low rainfall areas. So as the area are quite open, so they can be made at the place where there is a low rainfall or the tropical region, right? Future expansion is possible. So this particular area is having a building at one side only, right? A building at one side only. So we can expand our area, means we can expand the shading facility to increase animals, increase cattle even. The animals will move freely so that it will get sufficient exercise. So the animal can be kept clean. So, and we can keep the animal clean also in this particular area. So this is advantage. Common feeding and the watering arrangement is possible. So here we can have a common feeding and common watering facility. Clean milk production is possible because the animals are milked in a separate milking barn. So we are having a proper feeding and proper watering arrangement, right? A different place. And for milking also, milking to these animals or the cattle, we will have a proper separate place. So there is no problem in loose housing. And ostrich detection is also easy. At least 10 to 15. Why it is easy? Because cows are moving one place to another. So it is very easy to see all the cows, right? They are not collected at one particular place. So looking at each one is difficult in that case. But here they are roaming in their open place. So looking to all the animals is easy. At least 10 to 15% more stock than the standard can be accommodated for the shorter period. So we are having a lot of space. So at a time we can increase the number of animals. 10 to 15% more stock can be brought at a time. But there are some disadvantages also for loose housing. What are those? It is not suitable for the temperate Himalayan region and the heavy rainfall area. So if we are planning for the temperate region like the Himalayan region or the heavy rainfall areas, then this loose housing is not correct, right? It requires more floor space. So we require a large area. So more floor space is required. There is a competition for feed as the animals are open. So there is always competition for feed. Attention of individual animal is not possible. So it is not possible that you can look at each animal because the one animal, all the animals are free and they are moving one place to another. So looking at each animal with this respect is not possible. A separate milking barn is needed for milking the animals. So this is also a challenge to make a separate milking barn, right? So this is all about this session. We will have one more session to complete this topic. Thank you very much.